All right. Welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And I am here with Dr. Lisa. So, look, we are fortunately enough dug out of the snow and ice that I mentioned last week. But at the same time, Lisa, I think some of these piles of ice that I have in my yard they won't leave until like May, probably. I mean, it's just it's very cold here. So I think we did a weather swap between Maryland and Colorado. I'm pretty sure we did a weather swap. How
Yeah,
goes
we're
it?
at, we're at 70 degrees right now.
No way. No, yeah. Let's see, based on my
Yep.
computer, uh temperatures are supposed to rise this weekend to hopefully 45.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
I'm loving the 70-degree weather, but as I said, I think I said last week,
yeah.
it's not good. Like
No,
environmentally, it's
no,
not good.
no. It's not good. It's not. So, yeah, we're doing a little bit of a swap. I mean, when there are certain places in the country that are warmer than Florida, things are
Yep.
not quite right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's dive right into our word of the week. So, this week's word of the week is actually a little phrase here: language privilege. Language privilege. Now, Lisa, I know we get a lot of folks thinking about other forms of privilege, but it's pretty rare that we think about language privilege. We usually talk about race or gender or sexual orientation, but language is one of those that also plays heavily. I usually think about it more when, ironically, I'm traveling or someone is traveling to me. And we have to think about folks and their comfort with whatever language. And so, language privilege is the social, professional, and institutional advantage enjoyed by individuals whose language is dominant or officially recognized in any given context. And this, of course, like any other privilege, it goes unnoticed by those who benefit from it. But we know that it can create significant barriers for individuals who speak different languages, dialects, or accents. And now, Lisa, I know that we're not going to go there with unpacking the entirety of Bad Bunny and the Super Bowl 60. But this is kind of where it highlighted and reminded us that it exists and it has always existed. And I'll throw one more in there too. I know language privilege exists for those of us who speak English, or English is our first and or only language. But also, I remember too when last year when Sinners was being promoted, and when Ryan Coogler was doing a lot of media and trying to promote the movie, and he has a very specific, distinct dialect that is still English. But unless you come from his area of the country, which, forgive me, I think is Florida, but I'll double check. But unless you're from his region, his state, his area, it falls on the ear very curiously. And so I just want to remind folks that it happens within languages, it happens across languages. I think if I had to say anything succinctly about language privilege, is that we usually say if someone is speaking a different language, or even if they aren't, they have a quote unquote accent, when in fact we all have an accent
Yeah.
based on
Yeah.
who's listening. And so, with that, I just want us to be careful about language privilege, because it still happens whether a language is officially recognized in a country or not. Doesn't matter. It happens all the time. Whose language is prioritized in any given setting is really important for us to think about. So, we won't go through Super Bowl, but Lisa, I'm sure you can think of moments where language privilege was really upfront and in your face. Now, I don't know what we do about that, but just know that we're trying to stay out of that privileged posture.
Yeah, I think, well, we're in the Olympics right now, and so obviously the two
Ugh.
languages there are French and
Mm-hmm.
English, and that's always been curious to me there is I'm sure I read why that is at some point, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember. But it's in Italy, right? So you're like, okay, well, shouldn't Italian be one of the primary languages when things are announced, right? Italian, French, and
Yes.
English. And then the most not popular, like, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, the language spoken by the most people in the world is Mandarin Chinese, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think English speakers tend to think that they are dominant. And growing up in Europe, there's a couple of comments I'll just add is individuals who grow up on mainland Europe, so France, Spain, Portugal, Norway, etc., they all learn English, right? So many
See?
people
Mm-hmm.
graduate high school and they're fluent in English, and it's a requirement. But the same is not true for in the United Kingdom. So there,
Ah,
like,
okay.
I learned French from age 9 to 16, but that isn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the case anymore. And there isn't this requirement that United people from the United Kingdom learn a different language. And so that is a manifestation of
Mm.
language privilege. This assumption that you don't need to, because everywhere speaks English, right? And then the other piece to your dialect point, in the UK, dialect is also wrapped up in classism
Ugh.
because I'm from the south of England, although I don't know what people hear when I talk, but my English accent is southern. And as you move further north towards Scotland, the accent gets different and stronger. And there, as you move further north in terms of class, like economically, it becomes more working class and more economically deprived as you go north in England. And so then accent becomes a proxy for class in the United Kingdom. And I think there might be something to
Ah.
be said for that here in the US and when you go south,
Mm-hmm.
right? In terms of aren't there assumptions around intelligence and class as a person's accent gets more southern drawl y?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty interesting, right? Because it's like you're saying, it's not just English or
That's
language
right.
privilege, it's also accent privilege
Mm-hmm.
within
Mm-hmm.
that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because when people say here in the United States, especially when we're referring to English, you want to have like the journalist, newscaster flat accent or dialect. It's like, what?
Mm,
About? But then when I noticed that, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Someone
yeah,
is setting a standard for what is deemed as intelligent, frankly.
yep,
And that's what gets scary to me. Very
yep.
scary to me. Yeah, yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right, word of the week. Let's remember to think about language privilege as it relates to all of that. I wish we had a linguist here to help us unpack that a bit more. But hopefully, it reminds us to have this posture of openness when it comes to what languages we're using. And I hate to say tolerating because it's kind of like a throwback to, tolerating anything, but tolerance levels are quite low when it comes to language, especially for us as American English speakers only. Be very careful. Be very careful. All right. All right, let's get into phase one. Oh, girl. Yeah, if y'all can see my face right now, the level of exhaustion I have for this
Yep,
White House.
yep.
Oh my goodness. So let me start with the tragedy that happened the first week of Black History Month. Lisa, are we not noticing a trend that whenever there's a celebratory month, something regarding that identity group happens to offend them, whether it's
Right.
Pride Month, you can pick a month and
Yeah.
something has come out of that White House. But this year for Black History Month, during the first week, there was a video, and that video uh, was disgusting and repugnant.
Mm-hmm.
There was a video of the Obama's faces on the bodies of apes at the end of a minute-long video promoting conspiracy theories around the 2020 election. Now, all of this specifically was on Truth Social, so we know how to caveat this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It was on Truth Social. And Lisa, the audacity of 45, 47, the people around him. I am no longer expecting higher from the president. I'm still looking around at the entire ecosystem that continues to
Right.
allow the
Right.
disgusting behavior to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So this was out there. It posted around midnight that night. It stayed up for about 12 hours. And of course, the press secretary decides he's going to respond to it, or she's going to respond to it by saying, "Stop the fake outrage." I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, what? Now, I have lots of disdain for her anyway, but stop the fake outrage. And she tried to describe this video as 4547 was supposedly acting like he was the quote unquote king of the jungle in The Lion King,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to portray Democrats like AOC and Mamdani as characters and or animals in the Lion King story. And so it was later deleted after a staffer, quote unquote, erroneously posted it.
It was not a staffer. It's this anonymous, not named staffer, quote unquote, that posted this on his account. There's just no way, Shauna, right? That was just, yeah, okay, okay.
Look, I get it. I get it. But with that, of course, y'all's president did not apologize.
Mm-mm.
He quote unquote said, "I did not make a mistake" in a press conference on Air Force One. And Lisa, I'm going to get your reaction first to this. Like, what was happening when you first found out that it even was out there floating around? And then we'll get into some of the history around why it's problematic. But what were your first thoughts? Because again, here I go again with my same refrain. I'm not surprised yet, once again, disappointed. So there you have it.
Yeah, I saw it in the New York Times in the morning, but I didn't see the image because they didn't repost it, which I think was the right choice. And not surprised, just, I mean, it was, what's happened is that the conspiracy theory piece has gotten like very little attention, but that was also quite disturbing, right? But my first thought actually went to you and the boys, like in terms of what must it feel like as a tween in this country, seeing your president post something so repulsive and it's not even like dog whistly. It's not even veiled racism, right? It's just like straight out of the KKK, straight out of like race science bullshit, like the oldest manifestation of racism in the book. And to see that as a kid from your president, that's where I went with it. Like, how must that make young Black children feel?
Yeah, definitely. And let me just publicly thank you. You reached out to me, but also I had a long list of friends and associates who are white that reached out to me, just saying, I so appreciate the text messages that aren't, how can I say? They aren't polished and pretty. Like, it's not a statement like I knew exactly what to say. Like, I love when I get those text messages from my white ally friends that are like, "I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. This is not going to be a perfect text, but just know that I thought of you and your feelings without needing to be perfect about it." I so appreciate that. So for the people that reached out that also listen to this podcast, thank you. But just, I think now it's like, maybe the disappointment for me now is that when you start looking across the aisle on things, it took this for some people to finally get it. Like,
Hmm.
and to this point, like I forget who was it that said, this is the most racist thing that's come out of the White House. And I'm
That
like,
was
okay,
Senator Tim Scott said that. Yeah.
Scott. Okay, thank you. So with that, thank you for reminding me of the name because this is a Black person. I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking to myself, okay, if this is the most racist, that means that there's a train of racist behavior, and this
Right.
just happens to literally trump them all. So what are
Yeah.
we saying? So for me, I'm like, it took this when we have so much stuff to go off of. Like what was going to be the breaking point? And it seems like this is one of them, but it shouldn't have taken him tearing up the whole country. And then you finally get the straw that broke the, proverbial camel's back. Like, why did it have to be this?
I mean, I'm not sure that the camel's back has been broken. Like, I don't think Senator Tim Scott is going to stop supporting Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he's the sole African American senator for Republicans. And there were a handful of white Republicans that made a comment, but many had some kind of, I hope it's, I'm hoping it's fake, or it must have been a mistake, or maybe he didn't post it, right? So
Yeah,
both condemning the post, but also absolving the orange man from
yeah.
responsibility for it. So then when he says, I didn't make a mistake, I don't need to apologize,
Mm-hmm.
they all
Mm-hmm.
fall in line. They all fall in line again and be like, well, it was this staffer, this
Okay.
so far not yet named staffer.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Well, and look, we have to, how can I say, this came out. I don't have the exact timeline, Lisa, but I know it was within 24 to 48 hours before the Winter Olympics was about to have their opening ceremonies. And so the Obamas posted on their social media pages ignoring this and supporting the Olympians instead. And that to me is what is exhausting about all of it, is that you get tired of seeing decent people. You don't have to like them, you don't have to love them, you don't even have to completely agree with anything
Right.
that President Obama did in office, but they're decent human beings that continue to serve as punching bags for this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, when I went back, because one of my first thoughts was, we know this is not the first time this has happened to the Obamas, but how many kind of instances broadly can we come up with? Well, we got plenty of them. It's happened all the time by the general public that referred to the Obamas in some form or fashion to apes or monkeys. That's one thing. In 2014, a Belgian newspaper, De Morgan, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, which I'm probably not, referred to them in this way. 2016, Mrs. Obama was referred to as, quote, a ape in heels by Pamela Ramsey Taylor, who was at the time the director of a West Virginia nonprofit organization, and thought that was going to fly. And then Rush Limbaugh had a caller that referred to President Obama with the cartoon, the very beloved cartoon, actually, Curious George. That's not appropriate. And then, of course, the 2008 election cycle, where it was a constant reference to monkeys and bananas.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, we know this is not new for the Obamas. I haven't even gotten into the history of it, but we know it's not new for them. But at one point, like, the very same people that are using this to refer to the Obamas would then say that Mrs. Obama was being selfish for not attending this guy's inauguration.
Right. Right.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
I'm
She's like,
supposed to show up. I'm supposed to show up in the presence of my abuser. Hell no. Not
Right.
happening.
right.
Not happening. I salute President Obama for doing what he has to do as a living former president, but at the same time, where is the accountability going to come in? Where is the accountability going to come in? So this is not new for the Obamas. But Lisa, I know you probably are somewhat aware of the history of how this kind of trickles down, but just for our listeners, really quickly. So Darwin's theory of natural selection made it clear that the closest ancestors of humans, all humans, were apes. And then we have this theory of evolution that depicts humans and half human apes. Like even Darwin himself had artwork where it was like his head or face on an ape body to help people to understand the connection between humans and apes. Well, then later, here we go with the evolutionists that made the case that human varieties had some superiority and some inferiority. And usually the inferior human beings were of African descent or Aborigine or both, which then starts to bifurcate this whole connection to apes and monkeys. Mendel reinforced that theory, and then it just went on and on and on, where even in the face of evolutionary scientists that rejected that soul connection between apes, monkeys, and Africans or Aborigines, it just continued to proliferate in history and news. Like no one wanted to correct for that stream of understanding. And so, of course, then it becomes misapplied in lots of different places, including Nazi Germany. And we know that lots of Nazi Germany was modeled off of Jim Crow United States. And so given that, it's gone on and on and on. And so it is a long-standing, I almost want to say, an ingrained understanding by European descent and white folks in general that there should be a closer connection for Black people and Aborigines to apes and monkeys than anybody else. And so when it comes up now in the year 2026 and people are not accounting for the misapplication and then wondering why people are so upset. Like, Lisa, I remember when a lot of times you hear people of all races refer to little kids that are running around, jumping around, rolling over. They're like little monkeys. And I remember the first time I heard my mom say that about either one or both of the boys at one time where they were playing around. And when I heard it, it was like a dagger in my ears, like, Mom, no, we're not gonna say it. And now, mind you, this is their grandmother. I know the intentions are pure because that's their grandmother, but think about how it's been ingrained in her from this historical place. Haven't heard it again. We don't use that language in this house at all. And they don't use that language with other people unless they are at the zoo looking at a physical animal that happens to be of this descent, but we don't use that for human beings. And a lot of people don't understand why it's such a big deal. So when that whole, stop the fake outrage piece, I'm like, here we go again with another white woman who does not know any history. Okay. All right.
I mean, I don't know whether she knows the history or not. I think she just says what she's told to say because she doesn't have much of a soul. And if hell exists, she's going there, right? Like, I don't know that it's necessarily ignorance with her. She's just a pretty vile human being.
Yeah, I'm giving too much benefit of the doubt. I mean, ignorance. I try to revert to ignorance first, but we know that's not always true.
Well, and even, let's say she is ignorant. If she learned what you just shared, you know what she's going to do? Shrug.
Right? And tell folks to get over it.
Yeah, because she's not a nice person. I mean, that's a very mild way of putting it. But I think that it's interesting with the Curious George piece you mentioned with that caller to Rush Limbaugh, because I didn't know that, but I associate the Curious George character with parodies of George Bush.
Yeah.
Because he was made fun of because of this assumption that he wasn't very bright, and he was kind of like Curious George, right? But I think what people need to understand is that it lands differently when you refer to white kids as monkeying around, or George Bush as Curious George vis-a-vis President Barack Obama, or African American kids, right? Like, it's different because of all that history that you just outlined and the ways in which it's been used to oppress and enact violence against Black and brown bodies in the United States specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, with that, I think, something to be careful of is, again, this is one of those things where I'm very clear, like I mentioned before, unless you are in a zoo or in a safari and you are looking at an actual animal that is not a human being, I can't think of any other time that a reference would be appropriate. Just wouldn't. And at the same time, again, who's allowing the thought or behavior? If you hear people saying this around you, are you allowing it, or are you interrupting it? Like I had to with my mother, One of the interruptions I wanted to share with folks, because we talk about a little bit of everything on this podcast, and y'all know I'm part of the Divine Nine, the historically Black Greek organizations. And the first Black Greek fraternity that was established was Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, that was founded in 1906. And I recall many step shows and celebratory events where they would, in fact, sometimes refer to the ape evolving into a man as part of their becoming, or manhood, in their process as part of becoming a brother. And interestingly enough, the historian of Alpha Phi Alpha posted a statement. This is not even in response to this Obama situation. Prior to that, their historian posted the history, especially within African American history, connected to Aboriginal history, and noting that we should go with some of our other, mascot is not the right word, some of our other referential visuals to Alpha Phi Alpha manhood, like the phoenix, or some other visuals that are more appropriate, that have less racist history connected to them. And so even within our community of Black folks, we are still interestingly grappling with the issue. So I don't want to make it seem like, I'm saying from on high, we don't do that. No, we're grappling as well. But I thought it was interesting that they have a history of using that visual in lots of different places. And even their own historian is like, hold up, y'all, let's rethink this, brothers, on how it can or should be used, if at all. So think about it. But if you are a non-Black person, I think it's a bit clearer. I think it's quite a bit clearer, versus what we're grappling with within my own community. So, but there you have it. I love the response. Just really briefly, with the Obama's response, many people posted beautiful photos of the Obamas together on their social media to shift the algorithm, which I just appreciate that response. Even if it's a micro response, it becomes a macro response when millions of people do it. Presidents of other countries that also came out and condemned the post and whoever did it and the behavior. And I just appreciate how people outside of our own country see how ridiculous and offensive it is, but we can't even see it within ourselves as Americans. So don't use it. That's the lesson for today. See, that's a very simple action item from that phase. Don't use it. How about that? Don't use it. So, all right, let's segue into phase 2.
Okay. Well, you just made me think of something that doesn't have anything to do with phase 2, but I want to say it. Is
do it
related to other countries. So as everyone is aware, in early-ish February, there was another tranche of Epstein files that got dumped, or like dropped in a disorganized fashion, some over-redacted, some under-redacted, like 3 million files or something. And through that process, it became clear that the UK ambassador to the US, a guy named Peter Mandelson, had actually had much deeper ties to Jeffrey Epstein than was at first understood. So he had previously stepped down as the UK ambassador, but now he's like out of the Labour Party. He is he's lost. I think he might still be a Lord, but he's like lost capacity to be in the House of Lords. I'm not exactly sure of the specifics. And then I think Keir Starmer's chief of staff has now resigned because of his role in encouraging the appointment of Peter Mandelson. And as of today, it sounds like Keir Starmer, who is the Prime Minister in the United Kingdom, he's the head of the Labour Party, his leadership, his position as Prime Minister is at risk because of this Peter Mandelson issue, and that he appointed the guy to the ambassador position when there was some information known about his relationship to Mandelson, his relationship to Epstein. But Keir Starmer is saying that Peter Mandelson had lied to him about the extent of that relationship, which just got uncovered through this drop of Epstein files. So I guess what I want to say, and what you made me think of, Shauna, is there are 3 people in the United Kingdom, 2 of whom have lost their jobs / ended political career because of their one direct association with Jeffrey Epstein, the other person not so much. And then Keir Starmer's never met Jeffrey Epstein, right? It's not in the Epstein files. And his leadership is on the line. And I think I look at that, and then I look at what's happening in this country and how few people are being held accountable for their engagement with, participation in activities with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, there's just been so little accountability. And so your comment about how other countries look at that post that Trump did of the Obamas and how disgusted they are. And then you see the kind of cultural, social response in the UK to these 3 individuals, 2 of whom have very little to do with Epstein, but they're in the blast radius, right? And so I think it just puts into stark relief how differently other democracies operate in comparison to this country, right? And that's not to say that racism doesn't exist in the UK. It absolutely does. It exists very badly in France and all those countries, right? But the capacity for shame still exists among European politicians, like to feel shame and to apologize. I mean, Boris Johnson was taken out in the UK because he hosted or went to some parties with government staff during the shutdown. And he lost his prime ministership because of that. I mean, it's unreal, right? How different the standards are.
Well, and to your point, the difference in standards, my thing is this with the accountability. I think sometimes, because I hear this a lot in my circles, that we want to avoid shame. And I'm like, no. These are the very few times where shame may be necessary. Because when you have folks that are leaders of entire nations that say, yeah, I did something despicable, and what are you going to do about it? Even if it's despicable, I want to exercise my right to do it. And my right to do it is more important than the people that I harm doing it.
Yeah.
It's almost like I dare you. I dare you to keep me from saying or doing. Like, we don't even get fake apologies in this country as much anymore.
Right.
Like, now I get it. I mean, I'm not one that hinges on apologies because I'm all about change behavior. But for those that are very adamant about apologies, we don't get fake form letter apologies anymore. Like, literally, when we have other things happen in this country, at least we get a hashtag thoughts and prayers. We don't even get that shit for doing what we've done to leaders in this country.
Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable how
they're not even gonna perform it. Like, we're at a different level of hate when people won't even perform humanity anymore. They're just not going to do humanity. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when John Edwards was running for president, he dropped out of the presidential run because he was found to have been having an affair while his wife was going through breast cancer treatment. And it's just like, that just wouldn't happen anymore. Anyway, so I just wanted to mention that because it's been on my mind, and then your comment there just triggered it around how different culturally we are in such a different place here comparative to our Western European and other like Canada and Australia, other places. All right. So what I wanted to talk about for this phase is I just wanted to give folks a heads up and just bring back on the radar. We've talked about this before last year at some point, probably around the summertime, Shauna, is this federal law that has been introduced called the SAVE Act, and it stands for Safeguard American Voter Eligibility. So we had a little discussion about it last year, and I just want to bring it back on people's radar because it is back again. And the election conspiracies are back again. Well, not that they really ever left, but as we approach the 2026 midterms, there is definitely been a ramping up of rhetoric around fraud in the 2020 election and the fallacy that all of these non-citizens are voting, which we know to be very rare. And just really, a handful of people if it really happens, and all of the efforts by the Trump administration to get the voter rolls from the states so that they can go through and cross-reference it with their Homeland Security stuff, and the attacks on the mail-in voting systems. Is Maryland a total mail-in? Are you a mail-in ballot system?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, okay. So same as Colorado.
Yeah.
And as an aside, Governor Wes Moore and Governor Jared Polis have been the two governors uninvited to the National Governors Association dinner, with obviously Wes Moore being the vice chairperson, I think, of that organization.
And the only black governor in this whole freaking country. But anyway, continue.
Well, and Jared Polis is gay, right? So, yeah, it's definitely pretty interesting. Anyway, I feel some solidarity with my Maryland people with that. But I just wanted to quickly go over what this SAVE Act does. So it would amend the National Voter Registration Act, which is from 1993, and it's going to require proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. So it would require documentation that shows you were born in the US. So it would have to be an identification that is part of that whole real ID. If you remember, like this past year, there was a deadline where you had to have this real ID, which was not actually sure what it is, but your driver's license is programmed with additional information, a passport, a military ID or record of service, some other government issued photo ID that has your place of birth, right? And so the other thing is, if you are submitting your voter registration forms by mail, you still have to go in and present your proof of citizenship in person. And then also in this version of the bill, that was not in last year's version of the bill, is that that's just registration, what I just went over. This new version is going to require identification to vote. So for you and I mailing in our ballot, we would have to include a photocopy or some copy of our identification that shows that we were born in the US, for me, naturalized, you born, right? And then for people who are voting in person, they would have to come with an identification that shows that they were born and or naturalized, right? And the piece that is most concerning is that this bill, if passed, will disenfranchise a significant number of people. We're talking millions of people. It's something like half of the country doesn't have a passport.
I was going to ask, who has the ID? I'm sure not everyone.
No, about half the country. I would say there's a significant number of people who have no idea where their birth certificate is, right? There
you go, right. And can't afford to purchase a replacement because that does cost.
Yes, and a passport's a couple of $100s as well. And then you've also got this issue about name changes. And it's something like 95% of women who marry men, so heterosexual relationships, or indeed if there is a partnership, there's a marriage between same gender or same sex couple, and one of those people changes their name, it's going to be the same for them too. Then the legal name that you will have is different from the name that is going to be on your birth certificate. So then your birth certificate wouldn't count, right? Because it would show something different. So then you'd have to get a passport, but that could be $200 and not possible. So there's that financial barrier. And so that disproportionately affects women, particularly women of color who earn a lot less. Women also have more caregiving responsibilities, so they have less time to physically go to a DMV or somewhere else to prove that they are a citizen of the United States. People who live in rural areas may not have a DMV or another location that is close. They may not have access to transportation, so they may not be able to get there. That's also true for people with disabilities. So it is going to disproportionately disenfranchise women who are married or people who are married and change their name, people living in rural communities, people with disabilities, and lower income people. And the more barriers that are placed in the way of people voting, the less people will vote. Shocker, right?
Ding, 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 basic math.
Yeah. And so if it is complex, if there are hoops, if there are forms, if there are copies of this, that, and the other, then it becomes a burden that people just say, F it, I'm not going to do it. And so this means, like, you and I are fine right now, but if you move, let's say you move to Colorado, Shauna, and this act was in place, you would have to register in Colorado. So all of those requirements would affect you, same as if I were to move to Maryland, right? So unless you stay in the place that you are currently in, and you never move and you never change your name, you should be fine. But think about students who are traveling across the country to go to university and they want to register in, and the fact that people that move for jobs or for family reasons or all of that stuff. So it doesn't, just because you're currently registered for vote doesn't mean this won't affect you.
That's right. That's right.
And this is currently being debated in the House. So it's very urgent. And and unsurprisingly, we're 10 months, so 9 months off from the midterm election. So I absolutely know why this is happening, right?
We know
why this is happening now. So I don't know what you're thinking about this, Shauna, but call your reps, call your senators, and tell them no, thank you.
No, it makes me think about one of our common friends, Lisa, that you'll know when I mention location, but I won't mention name here, but kind of figured that something like this could happen. And so for every election, because they are in Indiana and need to come back to DC, they automatically have a flight on standby every time something like this comes up, because they can vote, mail-in vote, but that means that you got to get your ballot in the mail on time.
Yep.
That did not happen for this person. And anticipating that it wasn't going to happen, they went ahead and had a flight on standby to come home, check on family, friends, loved ones, and head back in order to make sure their vote was counted. We should not have to do that in this country.
Well, tons of people could not afford to do that, right?
Exactly. There you go. Exactly. So I almost want to say it's like a privileged inconvenience that person could even do that. But we know that's not going to be the case for most people to be able to do. So, the discouragement that we experience in this country to just not participate in the system, yet still remain victim of the system, not surprising. We know the timeline, what it is now, y'all. We're in February now. It's about that time to stir the pot. And that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and this is right on the heels of Orange Men saying that the Republicans should take over the elections in at least, quote unquote, 15 places, right? And this concern that ICE agents are going to be sent to Democratic cities and polling places.
And Lisa, I'll just add to that to-do list that you gave for, folks to call their representatives and so forth. For those of you who are able to, whether it's financially or otherwise, don't be discouraged by the red tape to get your documents in place. I also, for a time, look, y'all, don't you hate it when you think you lose something and you get so panicked about it, you order another one, you get another one, and then you find both? I did that with my birth certificate a few years ago. I was like, oh my God, I'm panicked. I don't have a birth certificate. And so anyway, take this time to get your documents in order, whatever your government issued photo IDs are. Make sure they're up to date. Make sure they're not close to expiration dates. If you are military, you should have that nearby anyway if you're taking advantage of VA services. But if you don't and need to go through the process of getting replacements, do that. Check your passport and make sure that it's not getting close to expiration, because everything is slower now. So give yourself enough time to get a replacement, all these different things. Go ahead and handle your affairs now, because we don't know. We need to sit in anticipation of something going left so that we can have our things in order. So go ahead and get that in order. Now, Lisa, what I do have, I'm hopeful that a lot of people have this, but if you don't, y'all check out your options. There are some relatively inexpensive options for um, either a safe to install in your home or some type of fireproof box or something that can hold your documents so they can be where you are and go where you go. I have a fireproof box. My grandmother had a fireproof box when she passed away, so we had everything in one place. Get your affairs in order for a number of different reasons. We just happen to be talking about elections right now, but get those very important documents in place. If you have children, what we did for our boys, you have the option, Lisa. I know you've probably seen this before, where you have the option of course, the passport book itself you will receive, but you can also get a passport card. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have one of each. So even though mom and dad are not together any longer, one of us has the passport book while the other one has the passport card. So God forbid we get separated from one another. One of us has something for both the boys. Think these things through, y'all. Think we did that before we went on our trip to Japan, but I've been wanting to do it for years. If you have dependents and other children that need that done, do it. I think I need to look back and see. Regular passport is every 10 years. Children's passports, I think, are less. I think they're 5 because their
That would make
faces
sense. Yeah.
change so quickly. But check y'all to find out when you need to do that, but do that regularly as well. But yeah, this is a good reminder to get our affairs in order while we're emailing and writing to our representatives for sure.
Yeah. So watch this space. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling very optimistic right now, but
Mm-hmm.
we can, we
Yeah,
can fight. We can fight.
there you go. Exactly. Exactly. All right, so we've given y'all a lot for today, and that's a wrap on this week's episode. Please don't forget you can reach us and see what we're doing on all of our social media and podcast apps. Please make sure that you check out unfazedpodcast.com. That's our website where everything is located. And if you like this week's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share this with your friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. So, Dr. Lisa, until next week.
All right. See you next week.